They stood on my doorstep as if nothing had happened. 10 years gone, their faces older but recognizable, the same eyes, the same brittle arrogance. My brother and his wife. The air was sharp that morning, brittle enough to slice skin. I opened the door wider, not out of welcome, but curiosity. And then I heard it, her voice, soft, almost rehearsed. "He's our son. We're here to take him." For a second, the world stopped moving. My nephew was upstairs, asleep, the faint hum of his breathing machine drifting through the thin ceiling. 10 years I had carried him, through seizures, through fevers, through nights when his body convulsed and I thought he'd die in my arms. 10 years since they had left him in the mountains like unwanted cargo. And now they wanted him back? The audacity was almost surgical in its precision. No apology, no hesitation, just claim and demand. I felt my jaw tighten, the kind of tension that could snap teeth in half. I said nothing. Silence was more dangerous than words. When they abandoned him, they called it mercy. A brain disease, they said. No future. A burden too heavy to carry. I remembered their voices, calm, calculated, almost relieved, as they handed me the weight they refused to bear. I carried that weight while they disappeared into another life. Now here they were, demanding ownership of the child they had condemned. I watched them carefully. My brother's smile was thin, brittle. His wife's hands trembled, though she tried to mask it with composure. They thought time had eroded memory, that I had forgotten the night I drove into the mountains, headlights carving through fog, finding the boy half-conscious, abandoned like trash. They thought wrong. Inside, a storm pressed against my ribs, clawing for release. But I kept my face smooth, expressionless. If they wanted a son, they would have to face the truth of what they left behind. And I intended to make them choke on it. I said nothing of refusal. Not yet. Instead, I invited them in. Their eyes wandered the house, the machines, the shelves of medical records, the quiet order I had built around survival. They avoided looking at the photographs, though. Pictures of him, growing year by year, fragile but alive. Proof of what they had abandoned. For days after their arrival, I played along. I let them visit. I let them speak to him as though they were strangers meeting their reflection for the first time. But behind the quiet facade, I worked. I dug into their lives. Records, accounts, property transfers. I traced the years they had vanished, how quickly they remarried their freedom, how comfortably they spent it. No mention of a lost son, no grief, no trace of guilt. Every night, after putting him to bed, I reviewed their lies piece by piece. And one night, when he reached for my hand in the dark, whispering, "Dad," I knew exactly what I had to do. They weren't here for him. They were here for something else. Money, reputation, a sudden discovery of morality shaped by convenience. I would let them speak, and then I would end them without raising my voice. The report arrived 2 weeks later. I didn't need it, but paper holds power that words cannot. Genetic proof, legal standing, unbreakable. I waited until dinner, when the air was thick with forced civility. My nephew sat between us, eating quietly, unaware of the war hovering over his plate. I slid the envelope across the table. My brother opened it, scanned the pages, and froze. His wife leaned in, her face blanching, lips parting with a soundless gasp. "You abandoned him," I said, finally breaking the silence. My voice was low, controlled, and by law, by blood, by every piece of evidence that matters, you lost him. They looked at me as if I had cut their throats with paper. Their voices rose, pleading, desperate. Tears finally came. But not for him, for themselves. I didn't flinch. I leaned back, calm, almost bored. You call him your son, but he calls me father. The words struck harder than any scream. I saw it break them. The realization that time had erased their claim, replaced it with mine. 10 years of absence could not be undone by sudden desperation. You left him to die in the mountains, I continued. And now you want the glory of saving him? You want redemption served on a plate you abandoned years ago? They had no answer. Only broken sobs, hollow apologies, too late to matter. I stood, pulling my nephew gently to his feet. Go upstairs, I told him softly. He obeyed, trusting, unaware of the war his presence had ended. When the door closed behind him, I looked at them one last time. You don't get to rewrite history. You don't get to rewrite blood. Then I opened the door and let the cold night air flood in. Leave. They walked into the dark, broken silhouettes fading against the streetlights. For a long time I stood at the threshold, listening to the silence they left behind. My heart was steady, my hands still. The storm had passed.